morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to real people instead of, at home working. Hopefully I don't work Dr. Bethel too hard. But how much time do we have? 15 minutes? 20?
It's 15, right?
15 and 20, that's fine.
You got it. I will get started.
Okay.
In the beginning, God made man and gave him free will. God then promptly began punishing man for exercising free will in any way he disapproved of. Nevertheless, the people of the Old Testament had it easy. Yes, there were plagues, sacrifices, and exiles, but there was also one-on-one dialogue with God. God, or at least one of his angels, would often speak to a person directly and unambiguously to tell them what they needed to do in order to be spared his wrath. God-fearing people of today don't get burning bushes or even WhatsApp messages from the man upstairs. No, Christians today have to rely on receiving his word through the Holy Bible. But everyone knows that the Holy Bible didn't fall from the sky. It was written, rewritten, lost, found, collected, and sanctified by humans. These humans lived in a society which was imperfect, and as a political scientist, it is impossible for me not to see the Bible as more of a political treatise. It outlines the flaws of man and society and puts in place rules and procedures that seek to mitigate the effects of our imperfections. With God at the head, it outlines the relationship of man to man and man to God, along with his host of angels, with the promise that if we get all of society to abide by the principles of the Bible, we get to live in utopia. Those who veer from the prescribed course are punished. When viewed this way, it's easy to see the similarity to the Constitution. The Constitution serves the same purpose and makes the same promise. It takes into account the limitations of man, the limitations of society, and the individual's relationship with the person in charge, in this case the Prime Minister and his host of MPs. If everyone abides by the laws, we live in utopia, and anyone who veers is punished. The two texts hold such importance in the Bahamian society for exactly the same reasons. They take into account man's flaws and create a code of conduct that mitigates them. They make us feel safer around each other and within society. They outline our responsibility to God or the state, and in turn, God or the state's responsibility to us. They give us something to look forward to if we suppress our natural urges, and they outline who we can shun and how we can punish transgressors. In this self-proclaimed Christian nation, there is no need for me to outline the importance that the Bible holds for members of our society. It's no less than the immutable, unchanging, absolutely perfect Word of God. Yet, there are many parts that Christians intentionally neglect to follow or flat out contravene. No Christian can or should follow the Bible to the letter. My question to Christians is always, how do you decide what parts of the Bible you follow and which parts you ignore? Is there a formula to it? A matrix? A rubric? No, it's probably more of a feeling. Because society is not scientific. There is no absolute right answer. Even the wisest and most judicious among us have nothing more than a nebulous, morphing understanding of what is okay to do and what is no longer relevant or even moral in today's society. Most of Leviticus and its rules on when it's okay to stone your daughters and eating pork and wearing mixed fabric come to mind. So why is it that the good, God-fearing Christians of the Bahamas have no problem disregarding parts of God's holy word, yet cling so dearly to the Constitution and all its flaws? I argue that at least a part of the reason is the lack of ownership the average Bahamian feels he or she has over the Constitution. The Bible is given as graduation gifts, and children are praised for their ability to recite Bible verses. Yet the Constitution is out of our reach. This carefully crafted document belongs to the politicians and the lawyers. It is written in their language, and our interpretation of it comes from members of their elite fraternity. The same used to be true of the Bible. It was thought that in order to maintain the integrity of the word, it should remain unadulterated by things like the English language. But once it was translated, Christians were able to take ownership of the word and its teachings, and were somehow capable of holding contradictory thoughts in their head. That the Bible is the unchanging word of God, but that there are also some parts that need not be a part of society. God remains supreme, but in our society, we trust our own moral and intellectual faculties enough to throw away the parts of the Bible that no longer fit the society that we want. Our interpretation of the Bible must be flexible in order for the Bible to remain relevant. And that interpretation is only possible because we can understand it. It belongs to the reader, and because of this, we can see that it is actually man, not God, who decides what kind of society we ought to live in. We need to view the Constitution in the same way. We must decide the kind of society we want to live in, rather than be bound by an inflexible doctrine. This brings me to the work I've been doing over the past year or so, and it's a layman's translation of the Bahamian Constitution. Now, I've had colleagues suggest that the word I want to use is interpretation rather than translation. And their point is valid, but the Constitution is so absolutely wrought with impenetrable legalese that, for all intents and purposes, it's a foreign language. The importance of this work goes deeper than just knowing the law of the land, right? It comes from an idea of what freedom is and what human freedom is. And it can be found in a discussion of the natures of governance and freedom. Just like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, we have free will. Now let's take a moment and have a little thought experiment. Put aside your all-loving, non-judgmental Christianity just for a moment, and think about someone you hate. Go ahead, you have permission, all right? Why do you hate them? Are they cruel, selfish, lazy? Are they simply in your way? Have they perhaps robbed you of any opportunity for happiness or self-fulfillment? Or are they just annoying? Right? We have someone in mind? Okay. The reason doesn't matter. All that matters is your life would be better if they were not in it. What stops you from locking them in a cage, or better yet, killing them? You may be physically capable of doing it, but do you have the right? Well, without going into details or down too much of a philosophical path, let's agree that the answer is no. No, you don't have the right to imprison or kill someone because they disobey you. Only the government has the right to do that. We've agreed to suppress our ability to hurt others, no matter how good the reason is, and give that right to the government, based on criteria it creates. That is reason enough to make sure that those reasons are absolutely and plainly clear. Understanding the Constitution, the rights it allows, the power it gives the government, and the limitation of that power is the only thing protecting us from tyranny. If we're brave enough to disregard the word of God, we need not fear altering the Constitution, but the first step is understanding it. Now, during my work with the Constitution, during the first draft, I was very careful to protect the strictness of the original, right? Being sure to get in all of the nuances and exceptions and roundabout clauses. But then when I was finished, I realized that it was almost as useless as the original. That's when I decided that what was needed was more of a good news translation, one in plain English, right? And so just to make this point clear, I have two examples from the Constitution. Everyone, please take out your Constitutions, turn to chapter 3. Certainly, if this was a Bible conference or a Christianity conference, everyone would have their Bibles. This is a conference on democracy. Okay, so we're working on that. Okay, the first reading comes from chapter 3 that deals with the protection and fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual. Y'all gonna make me read this? Chapter 17. No person shall be subjected to torture or to inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment Good enough. Nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this article to the extent that the law in question authorizes the infliction of any description of punishment that was lawful in the Bahama Islands immediately before the 10th of July 1973. Okay, let's just go ahead and take their word that this is good, right? So the first translation I did went something like this. No one may be tortured or have to endure inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. All right? But as you can see, this is pretty much the same as the original, right? The Good News translation, and of course this is still in draft, I haven't completed it yet, goes something like this. Inhumane and degrading punishments may be inflicted if such punishments were legal on July 9th, 1973. Right. That terrifies me. That terrifies me. I'm not sure what the law says today, much less what was going on in 1973, but it may be okay to tar and feather people as long as it was okay in 1973. Now I've had people smarter than me say that, you know, there's a reason behind this because it's about protecting old laws, and I'm sure the lawyers will take me to task at the end. But we shouldn't be afraid to at least say, huh? You know what I mean? It should at least be open to us having a dialogue about it. And if it is the case that I'm interpreting it wrong, then okay, good. Let's have the conversation in English and let's really get to what the point is. The next reading is even longer. Please, y'all, don't make me read it. I can't. Right? But this says, at least the first part, subject to the provision of paragraph 4, 5, and 9 of this article, no law shall make provision which is discriminatory either of itself or in effect. And it's almost like a fun puzzle, right? Like a scavenger hunt, right? They give you one clue and then you have to like go back and find where that clue came from and then kind of connect it to the piece that you found earlier. It would be fun if we weren't talking about our rights and our existence in this society and what our prime minister can do and cannot do and what police officers can do when they stop you and what they can't do, right? And on that note, it's a bit disturbing that police officers can quote scriptures but not the Constitution, right? So here are all the rights and freedoms and all of that, right? More importantly, here are just some of the ways the government can make laws that are discriminatory. And of course, all of this has been discussed quite a bit, you know, these days, in terms of man, woman, gender, non-gender, all of those things. All right, but I'm not even going to talk about that. Everyone else in the country is talking about that. What I want to talk about is E. 4E. Paragraph 1 does not apply to laws concerning. So remember, paragraph 1 was saying that the government can't make laws that are discriminatory except for these reasons, right? So we know all of these. I draw your attention to C, adoption, marriage, divorce, burial, all of those things, all right? But E, authorization of licenses for lotteries, gaming houses, or any other kind of gambling which may be granted to foreigners but denied Bahamians. In the original it says, for authorizing the granting of licenses or certificates permitting the conduct of a lottery, the keeping of a gaming house, or the carrying on of gambling in any of its forms, subject to conditions which impose upon persons who are citizens of the Bahamas disabilities or restrictions to which the other persons are not made subject. So, what's that saying? All right? Foreigners can have casinos, but Bahamians cannot. Or more than that, it's saying it's within the government's right to allow foreigners to have casinos and not allow Bahamians. Why are we talking about that? That's enshrined in our Constitution, and it's buried so deep that we don't even know that it's something we should be talking about, right? So these are just two very easy examples. And the Bible, the Constitution is as full of contradictions as the Bible is. But at least when it comes to the Bible, we're so connected to it, right? We feel an ownership over it that we're not afraid to make common sense out of it, to just say things like, oh, no, you can't be stoning your daughter because you don't like her boyfriend, right? We know that. So at the same time, we should have the same kind of ownership over our Constitution. And without that ownership, then nothing else matters. Whether we call ourselves a democracy or a dictatorship, right? And just a side note, it is possible to have a constitutional dictatorship. Just throwing it out there. We're talking about options, right? Just saying, we shouldn't be afraid to think creatively. But until we have ownership over these things, the essence of our country, the essence of what we are, and have faith in ourselves, right? The reason why I'm making the connection to the Bible is because there's this idea, oh, morality and God, and if you're a Christian, you have to follow the Bible and you have to do exactly everything God says. But we've proven that, no, we are capable, even with groupthink, to kind of move forward in society as we want, right? And even if you don't think that men and women are equal, right? Even if you think that, you still agree to exist in a society where you can't, well, you shouldn't, right, beat your wife if she disobeys you. Now, at least if you do that, you have the decency to be ashamed of it, right, and hide it, right? So my point is, it's not a matter of the Constitution reigning supreme and then all of us just following in line. Because, oh, well, the Constitution says this and the Constitution is so holy, therefore we must do whatever the Constitution says and we must protect it. And, you know, any change to it can be the downfall of society. No, let's step back for a moment, realize that society is made of humans, right? And then from that humanity, from that intelligence and morality that comes from, I don't know, it could be God, it could be evolution. I've heard theories about aliens, right? But whatever it is, let's have a little faith in ourselves rather than holding so firmly to documents that we haven't even read. And even if we do read it, we don't know what it says. So that's just my suggestion. And I think that it's something that's worth thinking about. And I have completed my Good News translation of the Constitution. That's not the final name. I'm still open to suggestions. But of course, I hope to have to make changes after June 7th, which is the only reason why it's not available as yet. Thank you.